Alright, hey folks, I'm Eric, the Maker GM, and I'm back with the next section of my review, or side-by-side comparison, of the 1/72nd scale Fine Molds Millennium Falcon and the 1/72nd scale Bandai Millennium Falcon. So, for this segment, I want to go ahead and take a look at the saucer itself of the Millennium Falcon. Now, the first thing that's pretty evident here is that the Bandai, which is in the lighter color plastic, compared to the Fine Molds in the darker plastic, the Bandai kit is significantly larger. Now, these are supposed to be the same scale, but clearly the Bandai kit is going to make a larger model. Now, the Bandai kit, I think, also has some significant advantages when it comes to detail. Obviously, it's broken down into more pieces, so where the Fine Molds has the mandibles molded onto the saucer, the Bandai does not. Those are added on as separate pieces. The rear engine deck molded on versus a separately built piece. So there are some differences that are evident right away. Let's look at some other really quick things that are just glaringly evident. Where the radar dish goes, clearly a difference here. This has got kind of a boss on the Fine Molds kit to set it up there. The Bandai kit's going to have a little bit more detail underneath where the radar dish goes. So that's readily evident. Another thing that's very evident is with this kit, you can see there's combat damage molded into the kit. So that's kind of a plus and a minus. It's a plus in that you don't have to do that all for yourself if you're building a model of the Millennium Falcon. But the Millennium Falcon is supposed to be a freighter that is very, very common. And Han Solo has taken one of these very common freighters and souped it up and amped it up and put, special stuff and modified it and all that kind of thing. So maybe you want to build one of these freighters, these Corellian Engineer Corporation YT-1300 freighters, that's not Han Solo's. With the Bandai kit, that's kind of difficult, because unless we're going to assume that all of these freighters get shot in exactly the same places, you may have to repair some of that battle damage to make something that's convincingly a YT-1300 other than Han Solo's. So when I build the Fine Molds kit, that's probably what I'm going to do, is paint it up to be something that's not Han Solo's Millennium Falcon. Instead, it's a YT-1300. It's the same model. It's very similar, but it won't be the same ship. So I'll have some freedom to do a paint job the way that I want and things like that. There are a few things that are really apparent in these. If you look at the patterns of the armor plating, you can see that they are not the same patterns. Here we've got a plate where here it's not really a clear plate. It's, there's some other things like that. Some of the molded on piping. If you look here, this is just straight pipes coming out, whereas here there's some additional detail there at the beginning of the pipes, so it looks a little bit nicer, I think. And I think that the raised detail on the Bandai kit is a little bit higher than the raised detail on the Fine Molds kit. Not sure how that's going to play out when it's painted. That raised detail may be too much by the time we actually look at it. Or by the time it's actually painted and ready to be displayed. So I'll take a look at that. I'll see how that comes out. But right there, we've got some basic differences between these kits. So the other thing that concerns me is this large piece. When you look at it, you'll see that right here there's mold flash. And what that's from is the edges of the mold when the piece is actually made, not clamping all the way together, so when the hot plastic is forced into the mold cavity, it squeezes out a little bit and creates this flashing which needs to be cleaned up. So that cleanup can be a little bit more of a chore, And the fact that it's here indicates to me I may be dealing with more cleanup on the individual parts as I'm building the model. So that's not great. Another thing that's also very evident is right along these edges, you can see little thinner spots on the plastic. Now, when you look at those spaces on the Bandai kit, you'll see those are actually cutouts, and the plastic's actually cut through, so it's kind of a little jagged edge with little squares cut into it. With the Bandai kit, that means I don't have to deal with that at all. With the fine molds kit, in order to get that correct detail, I'm going to have to go through with a little file and clean out every single one of those to give the same kind of little bite edge on the armor plating. So I'm not thrilled with that on the fine molds. So let's look at the bottom of the saucer now. So one thing that's probably not evident from these pieces, because the bottom is obviously made out of two parts on the Bandai kit, but when we look at this, the fine molds kit has 5 places for landing gear. The Millennium Falcon in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi had 5 landing gear. In Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie to come out, it only had 3 landing gear, just these 3. Those 2 were open bays. On the Bandai kit, it's a 3-gear Falcon. It doesn't have the 5 gear. So that's another thing that, that kind of comes up. Now again, on the bottom, you can see we've got combat damage molded in, which, like I said, locks us down to Han Solo's Millennium Falcon rather than someone else's YT-1300 freighter. There's also some pretty obvious differences when you look at this section of plating. There's some differences in geometry. There's certainly differences in the amount of detail that are there. I think the Bandai kit is really winning when it comes to detail so far. And again, like I said, that size difference. What size is the real Millennium Falcon? Well, we don't know because there isn't a real one. But clearly these 2 interpretations are different.